Hi, everyone, and welcome. Welcome to Backchat. Welcome to YogaBerry, your yoga for scoliosis community. Thank you so much for joining me as always. And today, actually, we are not completely live, I have to say. So we are recording this at a different time than usual, because I've got a guest from Australia here today. So I think that must be a first, because obviously 4 p.m. UK time is not so good for those in Australia usually. So I'm very, very excited to have Narelle here today. She is a yoga teacher from Australia. She will tell us all about all the wonderful things, of course, that she does, because it's not just limited to teaching yoga. And yeah, let me just bring her on straight away so we can dive straight into this. Hi, Narelle.
Hi, Christine.
Thank you so much for making the time to speak with me today.
Thank you.
Good. So obviously you reached out to me and said, because obviously I don't have a lot of connections to yoga teachers in Australia, just I think because of time zones and all of that. So I was really intrigued, because I think there is a lot of overlap in definitely teachers that we have maybe worked with. So yeah, it's really, really nice actually to make some new connections, and hopefully also, I mean, this is a worldwide audience, of course. Maybe giving people some more ideas of resources and things that are available, obviously, in Australia as well. So I'm thanking you again for sharing what you know, obviously, and giving support to those that are in your country.
Sure.
Good. So let's get started with, I would love to hear about your personal story with scoliosis. So what kind of, because I think you're in the process of writing a book about it. Is that right?
Yes, a slow, long process indeed.
Okay. So it must obviously it must be a topic that obviously has touched your life in some way, and I'm sure you will tell us all about it. But how did you kind of get interested in the topic of scoliosis, and how did you kind of how did it lead you into all the wonderful things that you're doing?
It's a really interesting question, Christine, because a lot of people ask me that. They phrase it slightly differently. How did you get into yoga for scoliosis? So, well, for a start, I have a significant scoliosis. So there's that piece. Secondly, I have practiced yoga since I was 4, and I didn't know there was this thing called yoga. I didn't know there was a form. I just did it on my lounge room floor. And, my parents would say, will you go outside and play with the other kids in the street? And say, no. This thing here is really interesting. If I put my foot this way and I flex my ankle like that, that feels different in my hip and it feels different on the other side. Why is that? So it was really about this deep investigation of the sense of asymmetry in my body from the age of 4 through this thing. I didn't call it yoga because I didn't know how to name. I just called it stretching. And and so that's how it really started, this incredible burning curiosity of, what is this sensation? And I wanted to see what it looked like. So I'd sit on Santi's knee and ask him for pictures of anatomy books, but I didn't call it anatomy. Those pictures of the body and those models that you press the button and the blood goes around, and he'd just look at my parents like, what? But I was really hungry to learn what it looked like, where it was, what it was next to, what it did, because I was sensing it and feeling the asymmetry. So that's you know, that answers both the questions of why yoga and why yoga for scoliosis. So it's not a
Yeah.
groovy niche market that I thought, oh, I'll do that. No. It was my embodied house that I was living
Yeah.
in.
Mm.
And so it kind of led me on this path, you know, this academic path of anatomy and spinal pathology and a whole bunch of other stuff. And yoga, I just never really stopped doing, because when I was formally diagnosed when I was 13, by then I was an elite level dancer, and
Mhm.
you know, they wanted to do surgery, and that was like, no, that's not happening. I
Mm.
need to dance, I need to move. And so we sought a second opinion, of course, and the guy that I saw, just the orthopedic surgeon, said, do not stop dancing, do not stop doing yoga. And so
Mhm.
I just saw him every 3 months while I was growing, and he assessed it, and it was okay. I was
Mhm.
fortunate.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about this diagnosis. Why in the first place was it very visible? Why did you kind of go to the
Yeah,
doctors?
that's really interesting because, as I said, I was an elite dancer. My mum was a dressmaker and a costume maker. And so I'm standing in front of the mirror, and she's pinning all this fabric across my body, you know, to make
Mhm.
this thing. And she's saying, will you stand up straight? It's like, I am standing up straight. I'm a dancer. Of course I stand up straight. And then we just looked at each other. Our eyes just met in the mirror. And it's like, oh dear. And it's not like we'd never really noticed before, but this was this really graphic moment as she was
Mhm.
fine-tuning something very specific and precise. And so we just toddled off to the local GP, and he was away, so we saw a locum, and he was just horrified.
Okay.
Mm.
And when you say horrified, did they do an X-ray straight away, or
Mm. Yeah,
they just had a look
unfortunately,
at
he
you?
ordered a full spinal, which the
Mhm.
radiographer rang up about, because, like, back then, that was, gosh, 50 years ago, and, they didn't do full spinals on 13-year-olds at the time. So, yeah, I got radiation poisoning, and it was horrible. But, yeah, no, there was a lot of X-rays.
Mhm. And
Mm.
do you remember what the curve was at that point? Do you remember the Cobb
You
angle
know,
or
I
how
don't.
severe
I
it
don't
was?
remember the Cobb angle. I know what it eventually went up to. It went up to
Mhm.
49 in the thoracic, and,
Okay.
I don't remember the lumbar, but I
Yeah.
got the thoracic back to 35. So, you know,
Mm.
yeah.
So do you remember what your feeling about this was, about this condition? Obviously, you're saying the doctor was horrified. That
Yeah.
must have made an impression on you as well.
I was really scared initially. I was in shock, actually, after that diagnosis, and I didn't know its ramifications at the time. I didn't know how it might progress, how it might deteriorate. And so, you know, at 13, I knew nothing. There was no internet or anything back then. So it was really
Mhm.
difficult to get information. But the second orthopedic surgeon was just really wonderful. He'd just come back from the UK working intensively with scoliosis, and he really helped me understand it's okay. It's
Okay.
all right. It's gonna be okay. I
Mm.
know you're scared, but this is what you're gonna do. And I was doing
Mm.
it anyway. So
So he basically just he said you don't have to have surgery. Just keep on
yeah,
dancing, keep on moving, keep doing
it's
what you're
right. He just
doing.
said, I don't wanna do this, because he would, and I've seen some other orthopedic surgeons, just because I was curious afterwards.
Mhm.
It's like, my particular scoliosis goes up into my skull, and indeed down through all the long bones of my limbs. So it's extensive. And, you know, most of them said this would be a really long fusion, and
Mhm.
no. And anterior and posterior, so no.
Yeah. And so there was no talk about bracing or any other
Yeah, there was,
treatment?
but it's just like, no, I'm not going there. I'm just gonna do yoga and dance, you know,
Okay.
because, as I said, an elite level dancer, you're talking about an athlete, really. And
Mhm.
so there was a high level of physical activity and deep kinesthetic knowledge of the body. And I'd already started to do a lot of anatomy. So I kind of thought, okay, I'm just going to walk beside this second orthopedic guy and monitor this. So be smart about it. Don't stick my head in the sand, but take it in my own hands.
Well, that's very, I mean, for a teenager, that's very mature and very confident, obviously, as well. I think a lot of people in that position would be terrified, right? And they would just, if someone even mentioned surgery, they would just say, yes, okay, I'll do that because you're suggesting it.
Yeah, no. I needed to move.
And what about your parents?
My parents, really interesting. It's like my parents provide me with these riverbanks, but they always let me make my own choices, informed choices and contained choices, but choices. And so the decision was always mine.
Okay. So I find this really interesting because you have got kind of this perspective, obviously, over a very long period of time, because I think wherever you are in your scoliosis journey, you have got this time that you look back on, you've got this time that you kind of have coming up. So I find this very, very interesting. Obviously, you were so confident about this. Was there ever a time where you were like, oh, I'm not sure, I don't know, I might have to have surgery?
No.
Never.
I wouldn't say confident though, Christine. It was always this sense of, okay, I'm walking this very fine edge here, but I knew that it was up to me. And I'm not saying that that's the case for everybody. Everybody's experience of their scoliosis is unique. But for me, I guess to be honest, I think I trusted my body and I trusted myself to be present with this midline that was trying to find its pathway.
So you said your scoliosis at its peak was 49 degrees in the thoracic. At what age was that? Do you remember?
I think that was around the time after my second pregnancy.
Right. Okay. And do you think that pregnancy has had kind of accelerated the?
I would say so. Yeah.
So you could feel this in your body, or how
I
did this
could,
kind of?
but by that time I had 2 children 15 months apart.
Right, yeah.
So, that's a heavy load.
Same as me.
On the body. And,
yeah.
And I had postnatal depression really bad twice, worse the second time, and hospitalized twice the second time. So I'm conscious that my yoga practice had, I wouldn't say fallen by the wayside. It had never gone, but it was not as central or rigorous as it had been prior. And mind you, once I looked at that X-ray, it's like, okay, yeah, it's time to focus.
Yes. Yeah. So before we kind of move on, because I think pregnancy is it's a topic that people are always really scared about. There's a lot of things. I remember that I was scared purely from like what are my pain relief options, basically, for scoliosis, but also, how is my body? So I thought always, if I can't trust my body creating, I mean, this is terrible, right? This was a long time ago. Creating a straight spine, how can I trust it then with this creating life, right? Creating and going through pregnancy.
Yeah.
So what was your experience, or what would you say to anyone who's worried about this right now?
It's really hard to answer that question because it's almost a hypothetical question. I don't know anything about that hypothetical person's history or or the way that they have a relationship with their body. So I think that's a very critical piece. What's your relationship with your body, and what's your history?
But do you have any advice maybe for anyone who is thinking about, starting a family and has maybe got quite a significant scoliosis?
I think if I was standing in that place now, not that I am at 63, but if I was standing there now, I'd probably say find yourself a really great osteopath,
Mm-hmm.
a really good osteopath. Do not let go of your yoga. Find a teacher who understands pregnancy, who understands scoliosis, and can help you move through this.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And don't stop moving.
Yeah.
Do not stop moving. Yeah. So it's those two things. It's the support of a practitioner who's working with the body in a modality that will support the body in its changes, and a teacher who can, here we are talking yoga. So, and that's been my life's practice. So find a teacher who understands both pregnancy and scoliosis and those
Yeah.
changes within that, and do it. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. So, do you, when somebody is pregnant, do you kind of, I always ask myself this, do we kind of focus more on that experience, and you're creating life and you're doing pregnancy yoga, or do you still kind of focus on alignment and doing that side, or both? Is it a little bit of both?
Well, I did a lot of yoga, actually. I'm just thinking back as we're speaking. In my first pregnancy, I did heaps of yoga,
Yeah.
and I was aware of both, actually, Christine, both the prenatal yoga and the sense of bringing the spine into its functional midline and strengthening around that. So those two elements were actually there. Yeah. It wasn't like, will I focus on this more or that more? They were both there.
A little bit of both. Yeah. Okay. And then, so then obviously, so you said after that second pregnancy, it was kind of at its peak. Is that kind of, so I hear from this, you saw your X-ray and you were like, oh, it's kind of going in the
I
wrong
need to do
direction.
something. Yeah, I need to
So
do
did that
something.
kind of give you a little bit of a
It really
push?
galvanized me. It just really brought me into clear focus. The precision, I would say, of the anatomist, and a lot of my background was in Iyengar yoga. So it was like, okay, I knew what to do. I knew how to do it. So just do it. And that's not to say I adopted a sense of being a hard taskmaster. Not at all. It's like I almost reverted to being that curious child. What does this feel like? What happens if I do this? What changes when I do that? But there was definitely this application, this intelligent, clear application.
Yeah. And then you said you actually managed to reduce your scoliosis.
Quite a lot. Yeah.
Quite a
But you know
lot.
what? That's never my goal, Christine. That is never, ever my goal, to straighten a spine. It's about how can we support somebody in finding the optimal functional midline for them.
Yeah.
And yes, it will come more midline, it will straighten, but it's not like, let's fix our back.
No, but I do think that just by you saying this, obviously, it went from, what did you say, from 49 to 35?
35. Yeah.
So that's a
That's a lot.
big change. Yes, absolutely. And I think it gives a lot of people hope, right? That it's not kind of, because we get told, well, your scoliosis, it's just going to get worse 1 degree or whatever the current situation is per year, and then when you go through menopause, then it's really going downhill, and then you add degeneration on top of that, and then it's just not good. So
yeah, you add osteopenia and osteoporosis.
osteoporosis, yes. And I hear this all the time, right, from people telling me they've basically been told there's no hope.
Yeah, I know, it's awful. It's really, that makes me really sad.
Yeah. So what would you say to that? What would you
Oh, look, there is so much bone remodeling that is possible. And
mhm.
again, it's about finding the support of the right practitioners. In that case, it's not just, say, an osteopath, it might be a nutritionist.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there's, you've got to be very careful with that age group of menopause, because you are dealing often with osteoporosis. And as you probably know, most people, the common denominator in a scoliosis is always osteopenia.
Hmm.
So you're always behind the 8 ball from the get-go. And so it's about, how can I rebuild that bone mineral density? But there are ways to work asymmetrically that will load the vertebral bodies differently on each side, because the bone mineral density is not even in the, I think of it like a cotton reel, but in the vertebral
Hmm.
body, it's not even. And so you need to kind of challenge that bone mineral density asymmetrically to
Yeah.
remodel the bone and remodel the connective tissue, and then strengthen around that new alignment. That's a process, and it's
Mm.
ongoing, because bone adapts all the time to change. So if you don't keep saying, no, over here, then, the bone just will go back to the unremitting gravity.
Okay. So you can change even though it's structural. You
Bone is
believe.
a living tissue. Bone is not
Hmm.
static. Everybody's under this illusion that bone is this in a state of stasis. No, no, no. Bone's constantly remodeling and changing. It's the
Mm.
great sculptor.
Yeah. Are you aware of Dr. Fishman's work
A
with
little.
the side plank? Well, what do you think about that? I mean, he talks about osteoporosis a lot, and he
Yeah,
talks about
that's
scoliosis, obviously.
how to be diplomatic. It's not a practice that I adhere to. It's not a practice that I teach.
And yeah, I don't want you to have to say
That's a
anything,
very
obviously, that
strong
you want.
asana,
Yeah.
that's a very strong asana. So for a start, does somebody have that capacity to sense the three-dimensionality in their spine? Do they have the strength? What's going on in the joints? Do they have the developmental movement patterns to support that? Do they have a head-tail connection? Can they connect the limbs into the spine? What's their core strength like? And I don't mean that in the old school core strength,
Hmm.
but although nobody's done any studies that I've seen in the literature that looks at multifidus and looks at transverse abdominis, I'd lay a bet those are not optimal in a scoliosis. How could they
Mm.
be? There's
Mm.
no way that those neural pathways are going to be firing well in a scoliotic terrain. They're not. That asana is a very demanding asana. It's rather an advanced asana. It
Yeah.
requires so many foundational things to be in place. And my question is, wow, why would you go in there? There are so many fundamental building blocks that will support the person in sensing their three-dimensionality of their spine, re-engaging. We have to really re-educate all those developmental movement patterns, retraining the nervous system. There's a swag of stuff that I'd be
Mm.
touching before I would ask a body already under stress to do something that's quite challenging, very
Hmm.
challenging, actually. To the average body, that's quite challenging, but not necessarily challenging in a way that they have that underlying support to rise up and contain and meet that well.
Mm. Yeah. So you're saying it's not enough, basically.
I'm not saying it's not enough. I'm saying I certainly wouldn't start there.
Right.
And nothing, let me say this here and now, not one thing. There is not one thing, maybe Tadasana, but there is
Mm.
not one, or Urdhva in Tadasana, there's not one thing that is going to do this. There is not. There is a whole spectrum of things that is actually unique for
Hmm.
that person.
Yeah.
It's truly about the uniqueness of that individual specific landscape.
Yeah, absolutely. So how, if we're kind of going there, how does your personal practice look like at the moment, and has it changed over time?
Oh, that makes me laugh so much. Okay, the reason I'm laughing is because I live part-time on a sailboat now, and so half the time I'm not in my studio with my trestle and my wall ropes and or either indeed most basic yoga equipment. I'm up on the deck, and yeah, my yoga practice is very, very different
Well,
now.
and most people don't have all of that stuff, right?
Oh,
So, I think it
indeed, they
sometimes
don't.
puts people off if you say, well, you need a rope wall, you need this, and you need 1,000 blocks and blankets, and so tell us
Yeah.
about, how do you practice if you don't have all these things?
Yeah, a wall is a prop, the floor is a prop, a chair is a prop. Most people can get hold of a yoga block or two. Um, I think it comes back to that premise of what are the foundational things here? What are the most basic? It's like learning a language. What's the most basic vocabulary? What's the alphabet here? And so often in yoga, it's with a scoliosis, it's not about doing fancy schmancy hard things. It's about doing something fundamental, sensing the body and doing it well in a state of deep listening to the interior body and to the space around the body and the relationship of the limbs to the spine. You don't need a lot of fancy equipment to begin to do that. So how's my yoga practice changed? Coming back to your question, it's changed a lot. There's a lot of adaptability. I'm up on the aft deck, on the high aft deck, and I've got a leg up here and an arm over there, and I'm just using at hand what I have, which is really what anyone can do when they go for a walk in the park and you see all this equipment. It's really about intelligent use of what am I doing, why am I doing it, how am I doing it. And in yoga for scoliosis, it's more about the simple, done well, break it down into partial poses, not long timings, repetitions, in and out of things. It's trying to work at a very alphabetized way that gives the body the capacity to then learn to say a word and then learn to say a sentence in a way that's well understood kinesthetically, and that the organism has the capacity to sense the forces, to sense and adjust to the forces coming through the body.
So do you limit yourself in any way? Is there anything where you're like, no, I don't really like in a classic Iyengar practice? Obviously, are there
Mhm.
any things where they're like, no, I don't do that. That's not for me.
Oh, there's certain things I don't do now that I did when I was younger, but that's got more to do with other physical pieces, bits and pieces that are present in my body. Say the question again. I've kind of want to get a hold of
If
what it
you
is you're getting
if there's
to.
anything that you kind of taken out or avoiding, or from like this, again, classic Iyengar, because there will be a lot of people who don't have the knowledge that you do, obviously listening to this, and they're thinking to themselves now, if they should go to an Iyengar group class where maybe there's not a focus on
Yeah,
scoliosis,
now that's a
is
tricky
there
thing right there.
something that they maybe should not be doing, or
Okay, thank you. Now I've heard what it is you're asking. It's always a question of working appropriately for where you're at the time. So as I listen to your question and you say, would you go to a general class, for example, an Iyengar class, if that teacher Well, Iyengar teachers are well trained. But however, if that teacher doesn't understand scoliosis well, a general class is probably not a good place to be, no matter whether it's Iyengar, Ashtanga, whatever it is. Who cares what it is? A general class is not the place to begin. Are there things that you shouldn't do? That depends entirely on the level of the practitioner, at the skill level, what they've built up previously. As a very, very, very general comment, I would say be really careful if you're going to be in a general class and you're going to sit on the floor and it's time to do floor, seated twists, because somebody who doesn't have that capacity to or hasn't built that capacity of axial length and understanding how to rotate, that you're not using the limbs as levers, you're not even twisting through the musculoskeletal system, you're twisting through the organs. In fact, that's the genesis of the thing. It's the embryological patterns and the organic body that generate the twist. And so a beginner will sit down on the floor and they'll just corkscrew down into their scoliosis, into their pattern. Similarly with back bends, they'll just hinge in the place that, it's like, so those sort of groups, twists and back bends, they get the classic, rap on the knuckles anyway. But there's a whole lot of stuff that needs to be built before you would even look at those things. Even something like a chair burrowed vajrasana, a really basic twist. Number one, it's chair. It's not on the floor.
Yeah.
Yes, you have a chance to lift first before you rotate. But how are you rotating? Are you rotating through the organs? There's a very specific way to rotate through the organs depending on your specific curve. If you have a teacher that understands that, fantastic. But will she be able to help you, or he be able to help you in a group class? Not the ideal place.
So what's the solution, right? Do we
So what I always do is
stay home?
No, not stay home. Absolutely not. So when I ever see new people, they always have to come and, number one, have an assessment first. So I know the landscape of your body and I can help you understand the landscape of your body, because if you don't know that, all is lost and you may as well stay home, because you must understand your curve pattern.
Yeah.
That's number one. Then I always get people to work with me for a minimum, bare minimum, a block of 4 private sessions, so that I can take them through really basic things. How are we standing in Tadasana? How do we sit? What are we doing when we do sit? All of these really, it's like this alphabet thing again. If I can support a student in understanding that within their own body, then they're safe in a class, so that they know how to intelligently apply and modify what it is I'm teaching in a class setting. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
it's certainly not about staying home. It's about finding a teacher to work with who will help you understand your curve and train you in the basic alphabet, along with sensing your body.
Yeah, no, and I meant it purely in a way of I think some people are kind of they're scared, right? They don't want to do anything that would make it worse, or that
or hurts, or it's going to injure them.
Yeah, absolutely. In which case they might say, well, I'm not sure. It's maybe better. Well, I can't afford private classes, for example. I'd rather do nothing then.
Can you afford to manage injury? That's always my answer to some people. It's like, well, really? This is here is your body. And I say it with all compassion. Here is your body. You are in your body. I'm hearing that you're challenged with that. That might be pain. It might be fear. It might be both. It might be, well, I'm not in pain now, but I'm really scared about what's going to happen down the track. I've heard that so many times. Well, do you want to clean up the mess afterwards, or do you want to learn how to say the alphabet now? Because saying the alphabet is not just what you're going to do on the mat, it's how you're going to walk on the beach. It's how you're going to reach up for that coffee cup. It's how you're going to do every single solitary thing, because practice doesn't stop. You know this. Practice doesn't stop when you get off the mat. Practice is how you breathe and inhabit your whole landscape constantly. These are
Yes,
life
absolutely.
skills.
Absolutely. It's not just that hour or whatever of yoga that you might do
Yeah.
twice a week or something.
No, that's useless. And so
Yeah.
that's where I differ a lot too with a lot of teachers who are classically Iyengar trained, or even just any system really. I have this thing that I call the snatch and grab approach, and my own teachers would be horrified. But I know that if somebody comes to me and says, "Oh no, Narelle, I have to practice an hour a day," they're not going to do it. So
No.
it's like, put the jug on, make the coffee. While that's boiling, you're going to walk up to the wall and you're going to do a Vahastasana on one side. Right, now the water's boiled. Pour the coffee, let it brew. Now you can do the other side. So for me, it's like, how can I build this into somebody's daily life and they will do it? And I know that has nothing to do with sequencing, and there is probably millions of people that would listen to this saying, "Oh my God, that's not a practice." And it's not. It's not a practice. But I would rather somebody do that than do nothing. If it's
Yes,
a choice of, I
absolutely.
don't have the time, I give up, or
Yeah.
snatch and grab, then do the snatch and grab. Please do
Yes,
yoga,
and
do the snatch
I
and grab.
think I would say it is still practice. It is
Yeah, but it's not this sort of classic, okay, I
no,
use my
with a
beautiful feet
beginning,
on
middle,
this
and
thing.
end.
Yeah.
Yes, but it almost feels like that's much more of an authentic way of practicing and integrating, as you say, into your life rather than separating it from your life and saying this is my yoga and then this is the rest.
Yeah.
No, it's all one thing, right?
It is all one thing. It is all
Mm,
one thing, but I will also, the caveat is, when you're doing the something while the water's boiling, are you sensing the body? Because if
mm,
you're multitasking by, "Oh, well, and I also just check my emails while I'm doing that." No, no, that defeats the purpose. So it
mm,
is about, in that 30 seconds, you are with yourself.
mm. Yeah. So how do you work with people nowadays? You say you are on your boat quite a lot.
Yeah.
Do you still teach? Do you run
Mm.
any trainings, anything like that? How can people
Yeah.
work with you?
At the moment, I'm not really working with anybody in scoliosis and haven't done so. The last workshop I taught was immediately prior to COVID breaking out. And no, needless to say, I haven't run any workshops, and nor I've chosen to not see private students as well at the moment. And if my students are experienced and they're well versed in their body, then I'm very happy to do something online with them.
Mm,
But a lot of my work, most of my work is very hands on, in the sense that I use my hands to listen to the body, to listen to the organism. Naturally, I can't do that through a
yeah.
screen. And so I find that unless it's a student I've worked with, I know their body, they know their body, I am not seeing people at the moment.
Well, we
Yeah.
look forward to your book. I'm gonna push you there a little bit.
Yeah, quite a few people are, and I keep like, "Oh, I'm a bit busy with Saltwater Songlines. I can't really do it right now." Yeah.
Yeah, so tell us about Saltwater Songlines. What is it? And yeah, help us
Yeah, okay, so
understand.
Saltwater Songlines is, in a way, it has a relationship with not so much yoga for scoliosis, but most certainly sensing the body. So it's a multifaceted project, but part of what it does in terms of its relationship to this context is it looks at sensing the body in relationship to ecosystems of the planet, of the land. Most of those ecosystems that I work with, that I live on, are coastal. And so I look at, say, different aspects of the body's waterways, the relationship of bone to rock, the relationship of sand to connective tissue. So I'm a photographer, I'm a writer,
Mhm.
I make pictures of aspects of the land that echo our physicality, and I write about that. So that's kind of that piece of the guts of the Saltwater Songlines project. it's not really separate from yoga from scoliosis, although Saltwater Songlines is not about yoga as such. It's about image and word and embodiment. Yeah.
Lovely. Thank you. Thank you so much. Before we close, is there any kind of anything else you would like people to know? And again, this is an audience of kind of a variety. There'll be teachers listening, yoga teachers. There'll be people who have just been diagnosed with scoliosis and kind of not quite sure what to do. Is there anything you have some advice or anything you would like to
That's a
say?
really broad spectrum of
I
people.
know it is. Yes.
The key is to sense the body. That's the absolute key, to sense the body, and to sense the body in relationship with the earth.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good. Thank you so much, Narelle. Thank you so much for your time. So we'll put obviously all the your links and everything in the description below. But yes, thank you so much for talking with me today and for your honesty as well.
You're welcome.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks.